I'll do it to the computer.
There you
Aha.
go.
Where is my thing?
All right,
Okay,
go ahead and see if
I
you
got
can
my
share
screen.
because I set this for everybody is able to share.
Okay. So, can you guys see that?
You might have to go into your settings and do share screen. Not there's another setting.
Setting where on in the PowerPoint app?
Hmm.
There's a little green button on the bottom that says share.
On the bottom. Oh,
See it?
okay. Yeah.
And if you hit share,
There you go.
All righty.
there we go.
Is this? Yeah.
Oh, you
There.
know what
All right.
I know what I was thinking of. It was for audio,
Oh,
like when
okay.
you're playing videos.
All righty. So, okay. So, talking about lighting, and I assume what everybody had in the past was something like a shop light, and you go to the store, if you made your own stand or you wanted to put a light up somewhere over a shelf or something like that. You go to the store, get a shop light, and it would probably tell you in lumens or maybe foot candles, like what it was rated at. And, occasionally give you a color temperature, which had a K after it, which it means degrees Kelvin. Um, Nowadays, when the when you're trying to get lighting for something, there's a couple of advantages to the new lighting. It runs a lot more economically. It's way lighter. The fixtures themselves are often the tube itself. So you're essentially buying two tube units per shelf, and they use less wattage. However, it's kind of confusing, and that's why I'm trying to do this, just to give everybody an idea. I don't want everybody to get like lost in the weeds with this stuff because it does get into a lot of technical stuff, but I'm just going to try to pick out what you really need to know. Um, so like I said, it was previously the description of the light was previously in foot candles or lumens. And now in LED, they'll give you something that might say a par figure or a PPFD figure, which is photon flux density. Yeah. Um, Photosynthetic photon flux density. So, but it does have a purpose. A lot of people, when they're trying to buy a plant light, and I notice this online a lot, describe, well, my plant is this much wattage. It's 10 watts or it's 25 watts or whatever watts. That just tells you how much power it's using, how much energy it's using. It's not a really good way to describe the light, the quality of the light or the quantity of the light or anything out of it. The only time I ever really believe wattage has a place is for some of the big square flat LED fixtures that you get like through Spider Farmer, which is a brand, or something of that type. They come in like 300 watts for heaven's sake. I don't have to even guess about the quality of the light or whatever the light. That's a lot of energy. So there's probably a lot of light out of that. And these were things that were used indoors to grow tomatoes, weed. I mean, this was really high intensity crops that you'd grow outside. And that's why the wattage is really cranked on those. And by the way, a lot of LEDs hopefully aren't working at their rated wattage. They actually have a shorter life if they do. And a lot of times, if they're made well, they'll back off that wattage a bit just to save the units. All right, I can't read this. I gotta get rid of this. All right. All right. Originally, we could rely on the lumens and Kelvin to sort of describe the light emitted. Lumens refers to the brightness of the light. They measure how bright the light is to our eyes. So it was a relative thing. Some of the lamps with a higher lumens, 6,500 versus 5,000, were brighter. Watts measure how much energy is actually used, how much it's affecting your electric bill. And lumens tell you how much light you perceive, while watts tell you how much power it takes. So that's essentially the same thing worded differently. Typical fluorescent shop lights are around 4,000 to 6,000 lumens. The Kelvin scale measures the color of light and describes how it appears. Lower Kelvin temperatures produce a warmer light. They give that yellowish type tint, yellowish or slightly reddish, which means it's usually more towards like the infrared scale for spectra, while higher temperatures produce cooler light, which is more blue or white. The light's measured in par ppfd units, and that's the indication of the quality of light falling over a certain area. The the what it's saying there is that as all these little photons are coming down, they're hitting an area right underneath that light. And it's more dense in some areas than others. Like if you have one of those big square lights, the 300-watt things, it's almost like a square within a square within a square as far as the where this light is most dense. It's really dense in the center, and then there's a bigger outer square around that where it's still pretty potent light, and then it tails off at the end. Um, One thing about LED light, too, in practicality, is it tends to go straight down. When we had fluorescent light, if you remember some of the diagrams of it, the light was almost like a pyramid. It would kind of come
Yeah.
down at an angle from there. LED tends to be a little tighter. So you may have more trouble with plants at the very edge of it. You might want to really put your low level uh, light needing plants at the edges of that. If you really need to know what these measurements are, and for some reason, when you're buying these lights, they didn't tell you, you can use a par meter, but I'm sure everybody's not going to run out and get a par meter. There's actually an app on your phone, whether it's Android or iPhone, called Photon, which actually is pretty useful. It'll do, I believe, any type of light, whether you're trying to get sunlight or foot candle light or PPFD light. It gives you an idea. And if it doesn't actually do that, you can always use a conversion factor to figure out at least a close approximation of the light you're getting. They had this thing for years where you put your hand on a sheet of white paper, and if it's a really strong shadow underneath, it's so much light, and a diffuse shadow, it's this much light. Honestly, I never found that useful. And I found that, it's also very variable by time of day, at least when you're trying to do this with a window. It really wasn't giving me a really good measurement. And I was always surprised that some fluorescent tubes seem to give a lot more light than others. Um, when way back in the day, when we were all using the early shop lights, they were T12s, which just refers to the diameter of the bulb. It was a big bulb, but it actually used more energy than the next generation that came along, which was a T8 and it gave less intense light. Not by a not by a lot, but it definitely, when you move to a T8, you would notice that your plants acted differently, probably. Sometimes, a lot of times for the better, I think. All righty. So what we're looking at here is the spectrum of visible light. So this is what the that part in the box is actually the part that we pretty much see. And a mixture of all light, when it's coming out of whatever source, the more that when you have a real mixture of all the light colors, it's white light. Which is kind of funny, since if you mix all the paint colors, they all turn black, but that's another thing. But actually, that's pretty much white light. Plants can use some of the UV light and the infrared light, but our tubes really shouldn't and are not going to have the extremes. Um, and they do fine. They do absolutely fine in the lights that usually these lamps are rated at. Okay, so these are different spectrums. These are usually what a light will give you. If you purchase a light, and it's a lot of times, more so now, I think, it will show you the spectrum that you're getting with an LED light. And this spectrum, obviously on these things, are all different. If you notice, on the one on the far left, it's got a lot of blue light and a lot of red light too. So that's kind of really a nice mix. And that this gives you more of, I think, a balanced light. If you look at the middle one, it's giving a lot of red and a lot of blue. It's probably going to be something something blurple, I would think. And then at the far end, you've got a lot of red. And I'll tell you why in a second, why these are different and why you should pay attention to them, because they do different things for your plants. And in fact, it says at the bottom, when you have a real mixture of light, it's great for all plants. They can take in what they need and they just don't use what they don't need, as far as the light spectra. For the yellow and red one in the middle, it's good for flowering and fruiting. That's why it's got so much red in it. And the one at the far end is more or less for seedling. It's got red, but it's also got the blue in it too. And these spectra usually come, in fact, I got this off a website where I was looking at the different lamps, the colors, and what their spectra would look like. A lot of people, when LEDs first came out, they really were trying to promote the blurple lights, which are the pink lights and the blue lights, and then mixed together, and it came out this ugly purple color. Those things, I'm sorry, but they're really hard on the eyes. They look terrible. They make the plants look like they're brown, and I don't think you need that. Plants evolved. They had sunlight, they had all spectral light. Why we should just restrict them to the two is beyond me. And for years, scientists didn't even think that plants use green light, because usually that the light you reflect is
Thing.
not the one you're using, type of thing. That's not true at all. They found that green is very important for photosynthesis. So that didn't even turn out to be true. So, getting a nice white balanced light, or if you like the warmer lights, you can get one that's a little more red, or you like the cooler lights, you tend to get one that has more blue in it. You've got to suit yourself as well as the plants. And the plants don't seem to be quite as upset about it, unless the spectra is really skewed, unless it's really for one color or the other. And oops, this one is pretty much another spectra. As you can see, they all kind of differ slightly for the way that the spectra is represented. This one has a very tiny spike for blue, ton of red. So, what kind of light do we want? Colors. And this is why it's important to kind of know the spectra a little bit. While both red and blue light are important for plant growth, red light primarily promotes flowering and fruiting. This is basically true for what I'm going to say with this. But let me just say that both blue and red light do have crossover functions here too. While blue light is more crucial for healthy leaf and stem development, making it particularly beneficial during the seedling stage, when establishing a strong structure is key. For optimal plant growth, a balanced combination of both red and blue is typically used. Now, you'll find some places that actually say that for seedlings, you'd want to use red. Red tends to make the plants a little stockier, I believe, and blue tends to promote vegetative growth. But in truth, they really need both. But like when I said, if you skew it one way strongly or the other, you could get effects that you don't want. You could have seedlings that are a little bit too rangy, or plants that are a little unthrifty if they're not getting enough blue. So red light for plants. Red light's effective in triggering the development of buds and flowers, making it vital during the flowering phase of a plant's life cycle. And red light is used also by chlorophyll for synthesis, which I did not know, but that's what I found anyway. And the characteristics of blue light is that it promotes stem and leaf growth. It's essential for healthy leaf development and helps maintain compact plant structure by preventing excessive stem elongation. Blue light is strongly absorbed by chlorophyll, which is critical for photosynthesis, and blue light is particularly important for young seedlings to establish strong roots and stems. So essentially, they're both important. Some crossover characteristics for them. Oh crap, I got lost. I'm sorry. I got lost in here somewhere. All right. So they have crossover, and this is why I'm saying, just forget about the imbalanced stuff because you're trying to do one thing more than another. I would go for a more balanced light, whiter than not. Some of the lamps that they have on sale now, especially on Amazon, are fine. They're not skewed too much so that you're going to get something really wacko, usually. All right. Oh, here we go. So how much light do we want? And if you're trying to find out any of this information, like how much light do my plants need, you can literally Google anything. If you type in how many foot candles does an African violet need, or if you type in how many ppfd does a begonia need or something like that, you're going to get some answers online. I do find, though, with the internet that sometimes it's not the worst idea to check a few different sources and see if they agree, because sometimes you have a crazy thing pop out and somebody puts, when I found this listing, which I had to adjust, they had for highlight house plants Monstera. Well, they're not really highlight house plants. You can give them some sun, and they'll probably be happier for it, but I wouldn't consider them terribly highlight now. So I had to go through and kind of adjust this a little bit. But in general, if you're looking for how many ppfd you need for your African violets, it's usually between 40 and 80 micromoles per cubic meter per second. ppfd. And they won't give you all the micromoles and all that, probably say 40 to 80 or whatever. um, I found that to be pretty much true. I had bought a par meter a while ago, which, if I had known about Photon, I would have just gotten the app because it's supposed to be pretty accurate, actually. Um, it, and I was really surprised because some of the earlier LED lights I had bought were sizzling. They were like 200, rated 200
Wow.
ppfd. Yeah, and I was like, I don't understand why these plants are so yellow. Am I not feeding them enough? They were getting crispy fried essentially under it. Those were some of the early lights that they had out. And right now they sell cheap lights on Amazon. I don't want to belabor that it's Amazon or that most people use Barina lights, but those are the ones that a lot of people online are familiar with. I certainly have a lot of Barina lights. They're relatively inexpensive. I think I
Yeah.
got them for about $10 a fixture or something like that. And they're supposed to last a couple of years. They run about 10 watts, so they 10 to 20 watts. They use pretty low energy. And the light is pretty good. It's stronger than my fluorescents. When I was trying to measure them, the fluorescents were giving off less light than the LED Barinas. And the nice part about these LED lights is they're so light. I don't know about anybody else, but I couldn't stand replacing the bulbs in the fluorescent tubes.
Hmm.
It was really dicey, especially if you've got a low shelf that's got it. And of course, it's always the tube in the back that goes, not the one near the front that you could reach. Um, these things, you can mount them in a lot of different ways, and I can go into that later on too. But it gives you an idea like how much light you need. And there's going to be another aspect to knowing what light to get also because of distance. Distance is critical to any time you're putting something under a light. I think we got away with it a little bit better under the fluorescents. It might be a little tougher with the LEDs. And I'll be getting into that. Here's some conversions for foot candles to lumens and foot candles to PPFD and PPFD to foot candles. Essentially, if you want foot candles, which is the old English measurement of light intensity, you'd multiply PPFD by 5. So if you do have old fixtures and you're trying to figure out how do these relate to PPFD, this isn't going to be an exact number that comes out, but it's going to give you a pretty good idea of just how much light is coming out of them and the quality of the light. PPFD really does relate more to quality of the light. The old measurements were kind of like the quantity of the light, essentially. It's a slight difference there in how the light is measured, but essentially it's giving you the same idea. So the quality of the light that's measured by LEDs is the usable light for photosynthesis. So it covers actually the PAR, which is the photosynthetically active radiation that comes off an LED lamp, is actually referring to the spectrum. What's part of the spectrum it tends to really concentrate on. So the takeaway from all this is when purchasing light fixtures, try to find the specifications the best you can from websites, the packaging that the fixtures come in, or even the labels on the fixtures. Some of my older LEDs actually had some of the specifications. And when I say specifications, I mean an idea of how much light it's giving off. And the original ones, I think, were referring to foot candles or lumens. The new ones usually should be PPFD. If you can't find it on the packaging, the website that you're buying it from, or hopefully if you get it from like Lowe's or Home Depot, they'll give you some idea of it, or you can look it up by the manufacturer of that light if they have a website. Um, some of the spectra that I showed you way far up here, some of these, like I said, were directly off. I think I stole them off Amazon just to show you what the different lights were. When they describe a color for their light, it'll say pinkish white, pink, white, or yellow. And this is what that spectra looks like. And then it'll also tell you other information on the site too when you're buying it. And this is a part that's kind of really important. You have to be aware of the distance from the light to the leaves. And this is because, and it's not terribly unusual that this was true, with any type of light source. But if you have an African violet under one of these little, and I'll call it Barina, I'll show you a picture what it looks like later. If you have a violet under that, I wouldn't get the top of the plant any closer than 8 inches from the light. 8 to 10 is usually good. If you go to 12 inches, you're going to actually lose some intensity. So you have to, when you're building your own plant stand, and a lot of people do because it's way cheaper than buying them off anybody.
Mhm.
You get they call them a baker's rack or Home Depot or Lowe's. They're just, if you look at wire shelving units, it's the same thing. They cost about, I don't know, somewhere between 120 and 170, depending on the size, maybe. And then you can buy the lights. You can make your own stand for 200 or less. Uh, in the old days, the floor cart that I bought one in the 80s, and I think I bought another one in the 90s. They were in the 500 to $700 range. They were very, very expensive. And that's way back then. So, this is why IGS went out of business. People they don't need to pay that much money for it. And you can customize your baker's rack or wire stand any way you want. You can actually change where you want the shelves to be apart from each other. You can change how many shelves you've got on it. For one rack I just wanted 3 shelves instead of 4. So I just put the extra shelf all the way to the bottom as ballast, and then, just made 3. I made the separation between the stands. It's so much easier to actually be able to build your own. But you also have to understand how big your plants are and where they're going to sit under that stand, especially if you wick water, because that's going to boost your plant up 3 inches or so, 2 inches,
Mhm.
3 inches. So you have to be aware of that too. So for the duration of light, with these type of, I'd have to say weaker LEDs, you can get away with 10 to 15 hours. If you have the stronger your LED light, the stronger it's rated for light, the fewer hours you should have it on. Because you can really cook a plant, it can bleach it out a lot. Um, I'm talking about ones that give off like the T8s of the LED type. Um, they probably give off about 80 to 90, I think, at that 8-inch range. But some of these plants, like the T5s of the LEDs, will give off a lot more than that. So was nicely on the site where I bought the light from, it told me exactly what the light intensity would be at different heights. The scale on the left is inches away from the light going down. So at 8 inches, it's 91 ppfd. At 12 inches, it drops down to just under 60. And at 20 inches, it's down near 30. I found that they tend to be, I would say the 12 inches is maybe, it could be a little less than that. Um, I don't find it exact, but this is a good idea of and I'll tell you why I don't find it exact. It's because where you're putting it under the light. If you put it really near the edge, it's going to be more like 30 rather than 60. I can tell you that now. If you move under it more, it's going to be higher. So,
Margaret,
yeah,
I have a question. Um, there's the little bump out that says like 728.8 for an 8 pack. What is
yeah,
is that an 8 pack of lights?
yes. They
Oh,
come
okay.
in usually 2 pack, 4 pack, 8 pack
Mhm.
of lights. And that I am sure that's got to be a total amount of ppfd.
So if you put
For the
all
whole,
8 lights on a
yeah,
shelf, that's
yeah,
what you would be getting.
yeah.
Okay.
And what I like about this is that here's more information that is really useful that did come from the manufacturer. Oops. And this is one of those really intense lights. These are more like the big square ones, the spider farmer type that you need for growing crops that are really intense. We're talking about 340 at 4 inches. Now, when I had the weaker light, one thing I did notice because my Hoyas that I had under these lights would come up to here. They would come up very, very high to the light. And we're talking about it's like over 100 easily. It's actually, it can get even higher than that, near 200. So, yeah, the closer a plant gets up to this light, that light intensity is going to be there. And can it affect the leaves if they land on it? Sure, because they do run, even though they're energy efficient, they still do run warm. And plant tissue is tender. So I wouldn't have them landing on it. A lot of the plants are my club's gonna grow are probably not gonna be the taller type of plant, but it's something to look out for if you do have other types of plants. And this thing is just sizzling. You have to go down to a foot to get to 80. So it's important to know like what the ppfd value is. And it's important to know kind of what it is at the different distances away from the light, because this can really make a difference to your plants in very bad or very good ways. Um, this is an example of my Hoyas showing light stress. Now, people do this to Hoyas on purpose because they like the look of it. They like when the leaves turn red. But these plants are under 10 Wapperinas, but I did have three of them going across instead of two. And they got very, very close to those lights. I wasn't sure how to set up the Hoya bench when I first, or the Hoya shelf, when I first decided to grow them. But these plants are kind of tall, and I did try to give them room, but they got awfully close to the lights. And you can see how they really change color up here. And this is not something you want on your African violet, I can tell you right now. What violets will probably do is they would bleach out very badly. And they probably get very crunchy in the middle and look like they have mites or something. The centers would probably even come up the outer leaves to close over the center to try to protect it from all that light. So it's not good for growing show plants, that's for sure. If you have and that's true for any light with a plant and you give it too much. Some people also put the lights on for crazy amount of hours in the day. Plants actually need 8 hours of darkness. They just like us, you can't have the lights on for like ever. And it does work if if you change the light times throughout the year to match nature. That'll work. Like if you bring it down from like if you had it on 12 hours a day and you go down to 10 or something like that over time. Things like that are fine. But I wouldn't like for any plants under lights, I wouldn't like give them a crazy amount of light. You're just not going to do them any favors at all. And here's two violets. And I believe at the time I did this, I think they were the same variety. I'm pretty sure. And this one, the one on the left, the top left there, was grown under fluorescent and it wasn't given quite enough light. They're both these plants are grown in solo cups and they're treated the same. The petioles though on this first plant are really stretched out and thin. It gives you plenty of space for the middle there. The one on the bottom was grown under a much stronger light source, which was LED. And I probably had it a little too close. And another thing I did, when you look at the outside leaves and you see them look that bronzy color, I'll bet you dollars to donuts that's because they're growing intensely under that light and they're not getting enough food as they're growing. I've seen that a lot. Um, I think some plants, if they are given conditions where they're growing on quite quickly, you can actually get them a little bit starved because if you're not feeding them enough to keep up with it, or you're not, protecting them from enough light or whatever it is, you can get these really odd looking bronzy leaves on the outside. The one on the top, the leaves are pretty. The markings in the middle are actually a birthmarking type of thing. When you see them coming through the leaf like that, that's kind of a little bit of birthmarking because it is a bicolor violet. The one on the bottom is just looks a little bit, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's sort of like a bleaching, but it colors it up weirdly. Now, this isn't, believe it or not, these are the LED lights I'm talking about. The brand name is Barina, and yeah, they're not sending me money or anything. They're not supporting me. I
Mhm.
just bring it up because I'm familiar with them. And I think a lot of the lights online are probably pretty similar, even with a different manufacturer. These, this is the tube, the whole thing. And they daisy chain into each other. I don't have the other end, but in other words, coming out of this light would go into this light, and then this light goes down to the next shelf. And at the end of all of the daisy chaining, as they connect to each other, is um is a cord that's got a switch on it. So you can plug it in, turn them all on and off at once. The daisy chaining is pretty liberal. You can do it. They usually give you enough cords you could independently switch each shelf if you wanted, or daisy chain the whole stand to one cord. They run low enough. I don't. It doesn't seem like you're overpowering anything, or it doesn't seem dangerous. Also, each one of these tubes has its switch on itself. So it's pretty versatile in turning stuff on and off. And the thing I really like about it, they're incredibly light. I mean, crazy light and weight. And what's holding this onto the stand, because this is like the top shelf, what's holding it on is just tie wraps. They give you usually tie wraps, they give you clips, they give you sticky, double-sided sticky things in case you have like a shelf and you wanted to shove the lights up under the shelf, but you didn't want to drill holes or anything. You just use the sticky tape on to glue them up there because they are pretty light. So it is really nice and it is versatile. And this this is my plant stand, the newest one I built. It didn't take me very long because I have other stands, I know where I want to put the shelves. As you can see, there is space between these plants, and they're delightfully decorated for winter here because it's 25% humidity in that plant room, believe it or not. So these plants are all having a happy time in plastic bags so that they get plenty of moisture. Some of them are domed, and you can see on this one, because I do have some moisture in there. All of that is condensation on the dome. And yeah, so my plant room isn't exactly terribly attractive. These two straps, which I don't know how to blow that up. These two straps are actually in self-watering pots. That's where they're out and looking happy. And that's a picture of them. They're actually being grown in rocks in a pot that's got a reservoir. There's a big wick that goes up through the rocks and into the reservoir. Now, with the baker's racks, also you can see that stuff could fall through. They do sell liners. I find that the liners are awfully pricey, but you can buy at like the big box stores. They do have rolls of plastic that you could actually make your own liners. Or you could, if you have something else that's just plastic, you could roll out if you wanted to. I have most of my stuff in trays, so I don't worry about it too much. But for something like here, when I'm watering, rather than have the water flow through and hit the top of the lights here, it probably would be a good idea if I put some plant liners right there. So, does anybody have any questions about anything?
I do.
Yeah.
Did you ever, I mean, when you were looking at the LEDs, did you compare the tubes versus the strings that you can kind of move yeah, they're like tapes of LEDs. Did you
Um,
see any of those?
I didn't. The tapes when they came out, when I was first looking at LEDs, um, I had bl- that's when I bought those really high powered ones because nobody described anything, so I didn't
Oh,
really know what I was getting. And the ones with the tape, um, didn't seem complete. Like the way they were being described, you weren't sure really what you were getting at all as far as color or anything else. And
Okay.
also, I wasn't sure how much tape I'd need. Some
yeah,
people were taking it and putting it like in an S shape across, across
yeah,
it. It was too nebulous for me to try to figure it out. And as time went on, things got a little bit better about being descriptive about plant lights because so many people started using them. There was a huge plant boom during the pandemic.
yeah.
Yeah, boom. And people were using more and more lights, and that's where I started hearing online and on YouTube about Barina lights. I'm like, what are Barina lights? So I went on Amazon. It's like the first hit you get because they're popular. And they're popular because they're cheap and they are pretty versatile. Like I said, they give you a lot of stuff to mount that thing and to run it in any kind of configuration you want. They had sizes from, I think, a foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot. They were giving you a lot more versatility than the old fluorescents were. I
So I
think they,
noticed your 2 foot light that you have 2 foot lights that you do instead of doing it um horizontally, you do it vertical. So what do you have, like four sets of two footers or three sets?
You mean on that small stand I have in the corner?
The, I saw one of your stands that had that you showed where they were connecting,
Yeah.
that
Oh,
goes vertical instead of
Slide
horizontal.
21.
Yeah.
yeah. That's actually a 4 foot one.
Oh, really?
It only looks short because I I tried to get more of a close up of the light. I didn't want to have the light on because it's literally blinding. I mean, that is bright
Mhm.
light. But yeah, these are 4 foot and they look a little skewed, I think, because of the, the perspective of this
Sorry,
thing.
I gotta get the dog in. Hold on.
But you can, like, if you do have an odd shaped shelf or something really odd, I think you can really just put them diagonally if you wanted. I do believe people did that because they were taking IKEA glass cabinets and making them
Mhm.
into giant terrariums.
Yeah,
They were fitting the lights. I remember one girl was fitting the lights diagonally to get them to
interesting.
work.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the difference is and how much light you're getting from that, you know.
Yeah,
I was just curious. Yeah.
it's also how close probably you get them to each other, just like with the fluorescents. The one thing I hated about the shop lights is they were always so close to each other. They were only about 6 to 8 inches from tube to tube
Yeah.
across. And I really didn't like that. The old, very expensive plant stands used to have ones that were like 10 inches apart.
Yeah.
And I think you got a much better distribution of light that way. So I think you can like put them where you want essentially to get what you want. But and having like an app that would tell you
Things are
how
so
much
much
you're
better
getting.
because
Hmm?
when you first started with the LEDs, I was like, that's way too much work for me to try to figure it all out.
Mhm.
But now that they describe a lot of the information that you need, it'll be a lot easier to to transfer to them.
Yes, and I really I maybe people aren't, quite as interested in the spectrum. I very much am. I always liked the cooler, the blue shift fluorescence. And I have a strong tendency to go with something like this.
Yeah.
This is something that I would definitely pick. It's got everything there.
So for my
And it's
regular,
got a little stronger on the two that the plants really like.
so when I have my regular, lights, I used a cool and a daylight.
Hmm.
So that, that seemed to work best for my plants. So,
Yeah.
um,
And that's why I tend towards this one. I think it's the same principle, really, in
yeah,
general.
interesting.
Now uh Doug Burdick
Yeah.
is leaning towards the pink one. He really likes the pink one, and
Huh.
he's getting a crazy amount of flowering.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so,
Have you seen
it's
variable?
working.
Have you seen variable LEDs, that you can switch it to maybe you want more pink or more blue or whatever, or would you have to do that with multiple tubes?
One of the ones I had bought long ago actually had three switches for blue, for red, and for white.
Uh-huh.
And I
Mm.
actually I had it and I tried it different ways, and I actually just went with the white.
Uh-huh.
The first of all, I hate the blurple thing,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
but I didn't notice. I personally didn't notice, but the plants I was growing were violets under it because it was too strong. And
yeah,
I didn't even know that when I first bought it. I mean, these things were like, if you, they were like 2 to 300 under them. They were like really strong lights. I did manage to get orchids to bloom under some of these things,
Mhm.
but since I've switched them out I switched those two very strong LEDs I had with some Verenas. And my orchids under there are now green again instead of yellow.
well, that's good.
And a couple of them have bloomed. So I didn't think I really needed it. I actually had a couple of them blooming under there. One of them I had never seen bloom before. So
I remember when you first
I
got
think you just
them.
need adequate light. I don't think you need to like blast them with light.
Yeah, I remember when you first got them, how bright it was I'm like, they were blinding.
Yeah. To tell you honestly, on the shelf that oops. Oh my goodness. All right.
Oops.
Oops. On the shelf that I have in the middle of the room because I just have too many plants and I have a shelf standing in the middle of the room. I actually took foil, put it over the whole thing and have it covering down to here. I have it so that when I look up, I'm not staring at glaring light like that.
Yeah, that would bother my eyes.
Yeah. And that's totally understandable. I think I don't even think you need to put foil. I think you could put anything there, sheeting or something, whatever. I just did so it would bounce back inside at the plants. Um, just to keep from having that in my eyes when I go in there. And it does help to block that off. See, these things don't come with reflectors,
Okay.
which I kind of wish they did
Yeah.
to prevent that. But and
Well,
the one
some
they do
do.
have ones with reflectors. I think they were a little more potent though,
Yeah,
because there are
and the
different lights.
reflectors tend to wrap around the LED. I've got the first set that I bought, they were Monoceros brand, I think, and they've got a reflector, but it like hugs the fixture.
Yeah,
So you're not getting that spread like you used to get with the LEDs or with the fluorescents.
yeah,
So, but some of them do come with reflectors, but I think it would intensify the light.
Definitely have to do research though.
Yeah.
yeah. It's not as bad as it used to be, where it
It
was
does,
really a
yeah.
wild west of I don't know what I'm getting.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I'm. At
Yeah.
least if you know the light color, you know where it is on the spectrum, where the volume is. They measure stuff in under a spectrum like that in volume. That's why it's really weird seeing the blue spiky. It always is like that. It's always a spike
Wow.
that can go tall. Yeah. It's a lot like in toxics when they're showing us something like that.
Yeah.
It's volume under it. It's that tells you how much there is. So it's using like calculus to figure out the volume under
I hate
that
calculus.
parabola type of thing.
I hate calculus. I dropped it, never took it. I could
I
get by with
managed to
trigonometry.
get through it. I don't know how because it was early in the morning.
Yeah, mine was too, but I said if I can get by with trigonometry, I'll stick with that. So that's what I did. Couldn't figure it out.
But yeah, it's a helping. Hopefully, it has on it like because, and I'll tell you why it's easy to not realize how intense this light is. In fluorescent world, as you went from T12 to T8 to T5, the light got more intense.
Yeah.
It's the opposite
Oh,
with LEDs. It's the opposite. So a T5, my lights are T5, is less intense than the T8. The
huh.
T8 actually has stronger light. So
Interesting.
that's why it really helps to look at the PPFD because that really surprised me. I'm like, well, why is that? Fluorescence, that number referred to actually the diameter in the form of eighths of an inch.
Okay.
That's why it was a 12. That's 12 eighths of an inch and 8 eighths of an inch for the T8 and all. It referred to that. So the T8 was actually just a 1 inch diameter bulb.
Hmm.
But apparently it means something else in LED world because that seems to have nothing to do with the size of the tube. It's more or less the output, and it's definitely stronger
Well,
under
it's
the
very interesting.
TV.
And I like that you had the spectrums and compared them to show what the lights are giving. That was really good because then you see what your plants need.
Yeah. And it does, I mean, you could probably get away with any one of these. However, you might want to optimize something. And to me, I always liked a balanced light. That's why I always went for the daylight ones like you did. Or when back in the day, when they only had cool white and warm white fluorescents, I got one of each,
Yeah, yeah,
balance it out. I kind of like something that's a little more even.
yeah,
A
me
lot of
too.
people like, stuff that's, like I said, Doug likes the pink shift.
Well, it shows with his plants, that's for sure. That he's got all those, but he spends time with, how long to keep it at this, keep them at the pink level, and maybe he does switch a little bit out for growth because his plants are ginormous.
They are. He's really got them optimized. And in fact, you probably do get enough blue with this to make the leaves big.
Yeah,
I'm sure. He's got something going. Whatever light he picked, I'm pretty sure he said pink. Um,
he does use the burritos. Is that what they are?
Verenas, yeah.
Yeah, Barinas. He uses those. I did know
Yeah.
that.
They're pretty affordable.
Yeah.
And they're easy to get. And like I said, they come in a lot of different sizes, which is kind of
Yeah, that's good. Those plant liners that you were talking about, the shelf liners, they actually have them in Amazon too. I've seen them there, three or
yeah,
four
I
on the
just
shelf.
think they're a little pricey. I got a roll of plastic and I was just cutting my own
Yeah.
point.
Well, the ones that the liners are a little bit more they're stiffer,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
but that's definitely a good idea because I've watered my lights many times.
You know what
So
you
have
could
I.
also use as shelf liners if they fit? It's something you'd have to um, look at the sizing, but it's out on my deck for my bonsai. I use boot tray,
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah,
and they have the little lip on them. It's so that I don't water my neighbor's patio beneath me.
yep. And those
And
things work great if as potting mats too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Those
This is
aren't
very good, Margaret.
cheap though. Well, when I started buying them, because I think I bought three the first time. They were about 20 bucks each, but they've gone up in price.
Hmm. Yes, unfortunately, everything has.
Everything. I just
Yeah.
looked at the price of eggs. Oh my God. It's like 6.49 for a dozen large eggs at Hannaford.
Oh, I was just over at Fresh Market, which is kind of, it's a little more
Yeah.
pricey than PC or something. And I'm like, oh my God, the price of these eggs. I think I actually got a container for 350 though. They had real fancy ones for like 650 or no,
Yeah.
$9. That's right. They have real fancy ones. You might as well get the chickens too for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was surprised.
Well, it's like a jump of $2 from when I last got them. And
Yeah.
so, but that's probably bird flu and other things.
Yeah, bird flu is taking a toll again, I guess, on the poor things. Now I'm
Margaret,
people too.
Oh, Lori joined us.
I did. I
See
slept
Don,
in, so I'll have to catch the rest of the presentation on the recording, but I'm here.
did you see Donna's note that she had to leave because she went to a 70th anniversary party?
Yes.
Like I said, that is a very important thing to leave for.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. Absolutely. No, this was very good, Margaret.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Margaret.
I actually I bought Barina now sells it's a baker's rack on wheels with the liners, with the lights, with all of the cords, and it's about $100.
Wow.
And it's really good. And I've only had it about a month, and I've been having tons and tons of flowers.
That's great.
Excellent.
So
Is that the type of stand that folds up?
it isn't. No, that's the only disadvantage with it. But it's just a regular baker's rack. But I like having the wheels because actually later today I'm
Yes.
going to wheel it into my kitchen and flush all the plants.
That's good. Yeah.
Oh,
You have a lot more
that is
room
me.
now.
That is not the rack. Let's go with actually showing you the rack.
I
Margaret, can you stop
realize.
sharing your screen?
Oh,
Oh
I
yeah.
have to do it. How do I do that?
Just
Go
unshare.
down to the share thing and click off stop share.
Ah,
There
there
you
we
go.
go. It was actually at the top for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you have the view where you can see everybody's video, you can see it.
Yeah, we
That
want
looks
the
good, Lori.
speakers. Okay, this is the
Oh, that's
speakers video.
nice.
Yeah, even just with the last even I've only had this about a month and the flowering's been really great.
Yeah. The other
That'll
Heidi
be
nice
and I
thing,
we saw a stand that actually folds up
I've seen
Yeah.
those too,
at
yeah.
Plantella. That was pretty neat. It's got like a thing, so it'll fold flat.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah. The nice thing about having them on wheels too is if a fixture does fail, I've had one fail on me. Um, if it's in the back, you
It's
can
easier
just
to get to. Yeah,
wheel it out.
Yeah.
that's much easier.
There isn't anything in my plant room that, well, one stand, the first one I made, that does not have wheels because I have no room to get around. So I
Right.
literally have to just wheel stuff around.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I wouldn't put anything not on wheels now. Because I can actually wheel the whole stand out into the living room if I have to,
Oh,
which is
that's
Yeah.
good.
really nice.
I can add those. I have baker's racks, but I never put wheels on them. I should be able to just add them, right?
Yeah.
You can, yeah. You got to know that I think you have to know like what model or whatever stand you have so that it's compatible. Because
Yeah, I got,
the shaft diameter.
yeah, I can always take one off.
Yeah.
I have like I have 3 shelves down in the basement that I'm not using. 2 of them are for work. And then I have 2 upstairs, but I was thinking of maybe just getting a small 2x4 or something like that for seedlings,
Hmm.
because that way they can get special care until they get bigger. I'm still running out of room though.
I think I have a 3-foot one. I'm using it for half plants and half like plant supplies.
Yeah, that's what I do too. Yeah. Yeah. No, this was very good, and it'll be good to get um the YouTube. Eh, would you sh make a PDF of your presentation so we could have a copy to reference?
Sure.
That would be really good.
Yeah, I can do
Fantastic.
it. I think maybe looking at Min's AVSA one. When is that?
The 25th, right?
January 25th.
Yeah, I think looking at that probably would help too. He's probably going to go into more depth about the intricacies of it.
I think I'm off that day, so I can. That would be good. Yeah, I probably should listen to that too.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Margaret. I got to get going.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have my homework to do with the um survey. Oh, that's beautiful. What
That's
is that?
Jolly Fireball. You think it needs some peace or
It's supposed to be semi-mini there,
I
Yeah.
know.
That
Well,
needs a haircut.
I just ignore it and it blooms like a crazy thing. So yeah,
If it's a cat, it doesn't matter what size it is,
this would
right?
be great if you need one for to explain grooming for.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That would be good for show. Well, oh, I have a phone call. All right, guys. Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Bye-bye.
All right, take care.